Namaskar and welcome to Indian Diplomacy, show on India's national television channel Doordarshan about Indian foreign policy, India's international relations, and India's engagement with key strategic partners and regions and sub-regions of the world that make a difference. Viewers, in this episode, we are looking at India's Act East policy, which has completed 10 years in operation. The Act East policy has been successful since 2014 and has many accomplishments to its name, but challenges and threats also remain. And to discuss this, I'm very privileged to have with me a distinguished scholar and writer on this subject, Professor Reena Marwah. Professor Reena Marwah is a professor of international business at Delhi University and teaches at the Jesus and Mary College, and is the author of many books on India's Act East policy and related issues. Let me show you one title that she has co-authored, co-edited, India and ASEAN in the Indo-Pacific. She's also the author of multiple books on India's relations with Vietnam, with Thailand, with Philippines, and so on. Professor Marwah, welcome to Indian Diplomacy.
Thank you very much. It's indeed an honor to be here at your show and looking forward to discussing India's Act East policy with you.
Thank you, ma'am. So to begin with, we have 10 years of the Act East, but before that, since 1992, there was something called the Look East, and often people are puzzled as to what is the difference between Look East and Act East. So it will be helpful for our viewers to first get a basic understanding of what the difference is as you see it in emphasis, in tone, and what have been the shifts and changes compared to the Look East. And in this new era, how is India acting literally differently than it was in the past?
Thank you. So India, of course, enunciated the Look East policy in 1992. And the Look East policy was changed by Prime Minister Modi to Act East policy in 2014. And this was really required because when you speak to people, experts in the Southeast Asian countries, what they really felt was that India was only looking towards Singapore. And it was only looking very much to its close neighborhood. And therefore, countries, especially like Vietnam and the Philippines, were really not within India's radar of engagement, the kind of engagement that we have seen post 2014. So at that time, of course, with Myanmar, we had to engage. But even then, the kind of engagement that we have, enhanced post 2014 is really, really very different. And all the ASEAN countries recognize this, they appreciate this, and they understand how India's own dynamism and economic growth has propelled its engagement beyond South Asia, because we were always focused very much on our immediate neighbors, which is a good thing, and we live in this geography, so we need to engage with our immediate neighbors. But we also needed to engage with the East and the Far East, where our traders, where our religious people, where our own diaspora has, built huge communities, and they are having a major impact. So it was very important for India not just to look at Thailand as, sending our tourists, Indian tourists to Thailand, but to really engage with these nations in the maritime sphere, in the economic sphere, whereas including investments and supply chains. And these nations too have, understood how important India is, and especially because of India's growing market. Everybody wants to be here now. And that's how we've been seen. And Prime Minister Modi, he is engaging with all the leaders as we have the East Asia Summit being hosted by Laos and the ASEAN +1 meetings. And that's why the 21st India-ASEAN Summit was also held. So in fact, even the Malabar exercises with the Quad navies are continuing. So it's a very, very interesting time. And thank you for this opportunity.
Yeah, so Professor Marwah, you mentioned the economic opportunity of India and also for us, this region is full of opportunities economically, and the last 10 years of ACTIS, for example, the India-ASEAN trade has doubled
Yes.
to $131 billion. Although we have a deficit of close to almost $40 billion, the overall, and then if you go to the Far East, as you said, with Japan, we have huge, investment ties and strategic linkages. With Australia, we have signed a, free trade agreement. So if you look at all the sub-regions, clearly the volumes and also the depth of the economic relationships with all the players in the ACTIS, spread out ACTIS sphere, India's engagement has risen significantly higher. And would you like to speak about what all has happened in terms of the business linkages and what more can we do? I mean, recently Prime Minister was in Laos for the East Asia Summit and the India-ASEAN Summit, and one of the points was that we will renegotiate the free trade agreement with ASEAN to make it more balanced. So it will be helpful for our audience if you tell us about the economic relationships with these players and what has been missing and what more we can do with them.
Yes. So of course, as I said, since 2014, we are vigorously engaged with Southeast Asian countries through our Act East policy. And one of the first key benefits that emerged was the signing of the comprehensive strategic partnership with Vietnam in 2016. And Prime Minister Modi was the first leader from India to have gone after almost 15 years. Now, coming to that, we have, as you mentioned, the ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement, AITIGA, which is currently under review. And according to the 10-point proposal that Prime Minister has just yesterday enunciated, that according to this 10-point plan, which has come as an outcome of the 21st ASEAN-India Summit meeting, is that this review process must be completed by 2025. And it is important because India did not join the Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership in 2019, and that RCEP had been negotiated for more than 5 years. And ASEAN countries were quite disappointed because India did not join RCEP. And till this date, they still remain hopeful that India will join the RCEP. So, because for India and for Indian importers, one of the key issue was the rules of origin. And because there were goods that were coming in from China, being labeled in Thailand, in Vietnam, being sold as goods that were coming
like
from Southeast Asia. So that rules of origin issue has really plagued the relationship. So we need to have some kinds of checks and balances. That is why the Prime Minister had called for a review of the ASEAN-India Trade in Goods Agreement, because our deficit in balance of trade, not only with ASEAN, but with China, it is also
massive,
very high. It's massive. So therefore, this was important, but we also need to conclude it by 2025. And as the Prime Minister has said, that 2025 will also be the ASEAN-India Year of Tourism. So where people-to-people connect is going to become very, very important. And people from ASEAN are also going to understand how best India's strengths can be leveraged for their own mutual growth, prosperity, and peace in the region.
Right. Professor Marwah, we did not join RCEP, and we had good reasons for that. But now, while they wait and may hope that we will rejoin, The other interesting development is the IPEF, Indo-Pacific Economic Framework, that the US has launched. Again, with a lot of the ASEAN and also the Northeast Asian countries and also Australia, all of them are there. So here, China is not there. In RCEP, we have China, which is the, like you said, the 100-pound dragon out there. So here, the question is, through IPEF, we are very keen on the supply chain, resilience and diversification initiatives and such things. We have not joined the trade element of the IPEF. So, is there scope for us to intensify economic linkages and expand production and value chains with ASEAN, as well as with the Australians, with the Japanese, with the Koreans, with all these big players in the region, even with the Pacific Island nations, the smaller ones? Can we do more through IPEF, and will that help to compensate for the disappointment, quote unquote, of us not joining RCEP?
Well, I wouldn't put both of them in the same basket, because IPEF is essentially a US-led initiative where we are talking about fair economy, clean economy, resilient economy. So there are 4 pillars, and the connectivity pillar, which we have not yet joined, because there are some aspects of that pillar which are not very lucid as of now. But definitely there is the fair economy concept, which I believe has huge potential, and that is what we are doing in the double tax avoidance agreements that India has already had with several of the Southeast Asian countries. So this double tax avoidance will definitely help to further foster not only collaborations but also co-productions and also investments, which are extremely important, because even bilaterally our investments still continue to be quite meager if we compare China's footprint, investment footprint in Southeast Asia. So Indian investors, of course, because we have such a huge market here, they don't really feel it worth the while to set up industries in countries, say like Vietnam or Thailand, where the language issue is also there, issues of credit facilities are also there, which are faced by our own investors. There are also issues for getting residence permits and other kinds of benefits. So certainly I think there are aspects in this, and of course the fact that ASEAN nations in this meeting itself have stressed that they would like that the supply chains are resilient. In fact, they want guarantees that the supply chain will be resilient, because these countries are geographically positioned in such key sort of places that it becomes extremely important. They do not want that cost of logistics rises, and India is also working towards this. We are trying to bring our logistics costs down from 14% to about 9 to 10%. So as India improves its own logistics, its own shipping facilities, it will certainly benefit other nations, and other nations are sure to benefit from us. So this kind of shared economic development is very important, because we are seeing attacks in the Red Sea by the Houthis, and this is ongoing. So West Asia conflict is also having its ramifications, and that is why Southeast Asian countries, because they are so closely linked with the supply chains, that they want to ensure that there will be supply chain resilience, and they want India to be proactive in this.
Right, right. So, Professor Marwah, we've spoken about the economic potential and also some of the hurdles and how they can be overcome. The other side of our Act East policy, of course, is security. And in fact, compared to the Look East era, defense diplomacy and entering into like-minded coalitions has been the hallmark of the Act East policy. So, could you give your thoughts on what all we have achieved in the security sphere, especially given the looming shadow of China and the kind of pressure it is applying on the smaller countries in the region be it Japan, be it Taiwan, the Philippines, Vietnam, Indonesia, and so many others. So, in terms of the regional security architecture, as we call it, India has come in through the idea of the Indo-Pacific, and we are now much more engaged than in the earlier era when it used to be called Asia-Pacific, right? But what do you think are the main security dynamics in the region, and how can we be a net security provider? I mean, we are already a net security provider in our own backyard in the Indian Ocean region, but east of the Strait of Malacca and beyond, our Navy still does not have as much power projection in that region. So we are entering into these coalitions with all kinds of groups, plurilaterals. And so let's talk a bit about the security architecture and how India is seen as a balancer in that region.
Yes. So first, before we really go to hardcore security, I would like to mention the vision of Sagar, security and growth for all in the region, that was brought out by Prime Minister in 2015. And then this was further elaborated, and we have the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative, which really complements ASEAN outlook on the Indo-Pacific. And this was also given a lift up in 2019. And in fact, India mentioned Indo-Pacific in a big way at the Shangri-La dialogue. And ever since, this complementarity, we have seen so many countries join the 7 pillars of the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative. We have seen Indonesia joining it. We have seen Singapore joining it, and also Thailand, which has joined one of the pillars. So whether it's marine ecology, not only security is important, but marine ecology, marine resources, as well as ensuring connectivity, in which Japan and the United States have also joined in the Indo-Pacific Oceans Initiative of India. So this is really impressive, because India again is seen over here to play a pivotal role. And that is why India is not only engaging with maritime exercises, whether it's SIMBEX, whether it's Cobra Gold with Thailand, whether it's the Malabar naval exercises which are happening now, whether it's a huge build up, the investments that Prime Minister has already earmarked for expansion in our defense production. So, and then, the game changer has been with the Philippines, the USD $375 million BrahMos missile deal. And we have seen that the first batch has already been delivered.
Yes.
So India is actually acting. It's acting on big deals, on defense deals. India's indigenization has really impressed the Southeast Asian countries, and that is why Thailand and Vietnam are also kind of looking at these kind of defense equipment, because all these countries want to boost their defense capabilities.
Yes.
And they are also allocating more
for
money
deterrence, yeah.
for deterrence purposes. They need to beef up their capabilities because they have long coastlines, and so they are enhancing their defense expenditure. And we find that, the way Southeast Asian countries, whether it is Marcos Jr. of the Philippines, or whether it is Pham Minh Chinh, Prime Minister of Vietnam, they have in no uncertain terms stated that they want that there is freedom of navigation, that there is a free and open Indo-Pacific, because there are huge stakes in the South China Sea, in the West Philippine Sea, which is it's also called.
Yeah.
So therefore, it's extremely important that India engages with them, because India, as has been stated, that whether with most of the Southeast Asian countries, there are no dark clouds, there are no elements of suspicion.
Yeah.
There are no conflicts of interest, as you mentioned. So therefore, there is absolutely huge potential for us to engage with all these countries.
Absolutely. In fact, the weapons exports is something new. I mean, it was not on the horizon even like 5 years ago, and India to step in and become provider of weapons that can help establish deterrence or balance of power in the region. It's quite a proactive move, I would say. Professor Marwah, you said there is no conflict of interest with ASEAN countries, and of course that's true. But often one sees the ASEAN countries are also wary of upsetting China by being very overtly involved in any kind of counterbalancing alliance or coalition, right? So there we are part of the Quad, which is not a military alliance, but clearly we are working to prevent a Sino-centric order from emerging in the region. There's no doubt about it. Then there is the AUKUS military alliance of United States, Australia, and the UK. And then the US has its own individual hub and spokes network of alliances in the whole region, treaty allies and strategic partners. So the question really is, how far should our Act East policy emphasize the counterbalancing aspect of China?
One thing I can say with certainty, that all Southeast Asian countries are engaging with China, but China's current dispensation, the situation that China is currently facing, its predicament, is that there is going to be some kind of economic pushback from the Southeast Asian countries. In fact, Indonesia has ramped up its tariffs on imports from China to 200%. So because of the fact that China is now, because of its overproduction, it is pushing goods into Southeast Asia. There is a pushback, and India does not really have to do anything, because China has actually not been kind to itself, in my opinion. It's not been kind to itself because it's engaged in militarizing small reefs and shoals within the exclusive economic zone of countries which have been overtly dependent on it. It has overproduced, it has overcapacity, and it is pushing, whether it's electric cars, whether it's other kinds of consumer goods, it is pushing these into
territorial
these
claims.
Yes.
The kind of territorial claims
the
they are
kind
aggressive.
of territorial claims. So it would have been in China's interest to focus more on its domestic issues, economic issues, and to manage its own growth, which it was doing so well prior to COVID, rather than to engage in this manner. And indirectly it's hurt itself,
Antagonizing a lot of these
because
countries.
of the China plus one policy would not really have come in. So US companies would not have moved to Vietnam or to Thailand or even India, because of this US-China trade war. The Southeast Asian countries are not happy about this, because they are really worried at this stage, that because they feel that their centrality, their unity, as you correctly mentioned, that all Southeast Asian countries, you cannot look at them as a homogeneous
block.
block. There is so much of heterogeneity, and therefore each country has very different kinds of relationship with China, but yet they all understand that the kind of credible communication that comes from India and the way India deals with these countries on an equal footing. We look at them as equals. We don't look at them as those small countries in our backyard whom we can push and nudge and do anything with,
And bully.
use laser shows or push water cannons. India will never do such a thing. And that is why our credibility has really seen a big boost, and that is why they want to engage much more with us.
Absolutely. So, viewers, it's a fascinating conversation with Professor Reena Marwah, and the main point is that India actually generates public goods and benefits for all its partners in the ASEAN sub-region, in the Northeast Asian region, South Korea, Mongolia, Japan, in the Oceania region, including Pacific Islands, Australia, New Zealand. All the players actually gain from engaging with India. There is no threat from India. There is no militarization from India. India is not making any territorial claims on any of these countries. And there are, civilized ways of entering into relationships in the international sphere, and that's what we do. So it's the way China approaches this region and the way we have approached it is like chalk and cheese, and that is something that needs to be put out there for everyone's consideration. And as Professor Marwah says, India is much more benign and respected and wanted. It is not feared the way China is feared. And that's an advantage for us as our Act East policy enters its second decade. And going forward, we will need the goodwill and the empathy and the support of not just the elites and the ruling establishments of the East Asian and Oceania countries, but also of their people. And we are engaging with them at different levels. It's not only economics and military, there's also a whole cultural sphere which we could have discussed, but for paucity of time we didn't. The linkages that we have are being revived, the heritage linkages, the ancient spiritual traditions that have crisscrossed across this region and are linked to origins in India. So India will remain a friend for all these countries, and we will ensure that we grow together and that we can create a balanced Indo-Pacific, a free and open Indo-Pacific, and that remains our goal. I want to thank Professor Reena Marwah for outstanding scholarship and all the work you have done, the specialized work, and of course for the insights you shared with us today. Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you so much.
So viewers, India's Act East policy is robust and dynamic, and is touching all the major players and sub-regions that fall east of our mainland. And these countries and structures that the countries have created, all of them welcome India, and we are upholding the unity and the consensus building among these countries and the institutions that go behind it. So India is a constructive player, and India's Act East policy has a bright future. Wherever there are shortcomings, we are trying to work on them and to enhance the kind of benefits that we can give to our partners there, and vice versa. So let's keep a close eye on the Act East policy as it completes 10 years and moves forward. Thank you for watching. I'll see you again next time. Until then, take care.